my husband keeps asking, what did he do wrong, and what contributions did he make to problems in the marriage? And so I respond, but I'm responding in very emotional ways, and he asks what he can do differently, and I don't know how to respond in a productive, non-emotional
Okay, can you give me an
way.
example of what you mean when you say respond emotionally? What do you do?
Oh, I say, like, I feel devalued because of this, or I,
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like I feel controlled.
Okay, so you're just
And
talking about
and
how
so
you feel. I guess I'm missing something. How, why do you say then that you're answering emotionally? Are you yelling at him? Are you sobbing? I mean,
oh
what's the
no,
emotional
I'm
connection?
asking with emotional phrases, and he is struggles with emotion. So I'm saying it in a not like, if I asked him what I did wrong, he would say, "You did this," and it was like an action, like
Mm-hmm.
instead where I'm like, I feel, or I feel controlled,
Mm-hmm.
I feel um,
Okay, so when you say that,
hurt.
when you say I feel controlled, does he then ask for examples?
Um, no.
Okay, so
and,
I
and
get,
I've given him the control questionnaire, and he doesn't view himself as controlling.
okay, all right. So I guess I'm missing something here, something I'm not understanding. It's really okay to answer in terms of this is what I feel. So tell me how this is a problem, because I'm not catching something here. So help me.
Well, I think based on like things that I can change, um, I'm saying it with um, stop, you know, being in control of the money, and stop, treating me like I'm an evil person and I'm against you.
Uh huh.
And those things are they're just not working. He wants to know what he did wrong and wants to know what he can do differently, but doesn't take any responsibility or accept that he's done anything wrong.
Even when you give him an example, like please stop controlling the money because I feel like I'm being controlled when that happens, he looks at you and goes, I don't understand what you mean. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. So you're actually giving.
Or no, he says,
Go ahead,
he would
please.
say, I am in control of the money because I don't like the way that you spend it.
So he's defensive.
So he's defensive. When you give concrete examples,
Hmm.
he rejects the concrete examples.
Yes.
Okay. Now, it doesn't sound to me, based on what I'm hearing, and of course, all I can go off is what you're saying, but it doesn't sound to me, based on what you're saying, that you're doing anything wrong. It sounds as if, now you see, if you were working with a counselor or therapist, and we would teach the same principles because they're applicable, speak in terms of this is how I feel, because that helps the other person to feel less defensive. I feel control, etc. And if they ask for an example, can you tell me what you're talking about? Well, the fact that you control all the money, I feel controlled. What you're doing, based on what I'm hearing here, what you're doing is exactly the way that we would teach people to do it. Or if you were going to see a counselor or therapist, he or she would be saying that that's the way you should do it. What I'm hearing here is your frustration in that you are doing those things, and the response back from him is, I reject what you just said, basically. Am I getting
Hmm.
that right?
Yes.
Okay. And if the question you have is, well, how can I do it differently so that he hears it? I don't know that you can do that any better. I mean, when you say, this is what I feel, that's crucial. When he says, what do you mean? Well, this is the example. May I give you this example? The only suggestion I can give is that your example might become more concrete. Like, I needed $20 the other day to do this, but because of the way you control the money, I didn't have the $20 to do that, and I felt embarrassed, or I felt frustrated, or I felt helpless, or whatever the feeling might be. That's the only thing I can think of that you can say or do that makes it any clearer. Now, if that were to work, then fine. Just give more specific examples rather than you control the money. It's like the other day when I was in this situation and didn't have the money because of the way you control it, I felt helpless, frustrated, whatever the thing might be. Now, if at that point he finally goes, oh, I get it, I understand, awesome. But if at that point he continues with, well, yeah, but I didn't want you to have that $20 because I don't like the way you spend money, then I don't know that there's anything you can do better or differently to get him to understand that. Because communication's always a two-way process. Not just what you feel, not just what you're experiencing, not just the stories that you can tell, but if the other person rejects those out of hand, I don't know that there's anything magic that you can do to get him to understand or agree. So I hear your frustration, I really do. And I would suggest try the more concrete examples, but it doesn't sound to me like that the problem, based on what you're saying, and I'm just hearing this side of it, it doesn't sound like the problem is with you. Am I anywhere close to being right about this?
I'm sorry?
Does it sound like what I'm saying is correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I hear your frustration, and I certainly can understand. But I don't know how you get a person to understand who refuses to understand. And I'm not trying to tell you this is hopeless. I'm just saying I don't know how you do that better. Now, sometimes if there's a third party, for example, have you guys ever seen a therapist or counselor together?
We have been on a couple of coaching calls, and he's come to see my counselor a couple of times.
Okay. On the coaching calls, are you both on the call at the same time?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And has the coach been able to help him understand how you feel? Any at all?
Not yet.
Not yet. And so what kind of things will he say after the coaching call?
He's usually just angry. It's more like details but he wants to have a conversation with my dad and try to get his input and opinion, because he thinks that's somebody that both of us respect and is a third party person.
How do you feel
and
about that?
My dad has no counseling skills.
Yeah, that's okay.
So I think it's great.
Okay. And is your dad a wise man?
Yes.
Well, if you're okay with that and you think your dad's a wise man and he's asking for that, we typically advise people not to use friends or family because they can be very prejudiced. But in the sense that it's your husband asking for that, and if you think he will actually hear dad, then I think that could be a good idea. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a good idea. I'm just concerned with, I could even influence my dad into things to say, but I'm kind of curious about what's going to be said and,
in other words, you think he's going to hurt you in your father's eyes?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think that, but may air dirty laundry.
That you don't want your dad to know?
At this point, I don't really care, but I just don't want it to get ugly, like, in that sense.
Well, you might want to set some ground rules then. If you're going to talk to dad, you might want to set some ground rules both with your husband and with dad. Like, these are the things we can talk about. This area is okay, and we don't do things out there. And you might look at your dad and say, he's probably going to say some negative things about me. Can you cope with that, Dad, and still be reasonable without getting emotional? And if Dad says, oh, hell no, if he says bad things about you, I'm going to get pretty mad, then you might tell your husband, I don't know that this is going to work like you want it to. But if Dad says, okay, and you believe that Dad can maintain composure, then maybe setting some ground rules up front might make sense. Now, obviously, it's your decision. You do what you think is best. But if he trusts your father and he thinks your father can be of value here and you're okay with that, and you don't think that Dad's either going to throw him under the bus or throw you under the bus, while it's not something we would recommend, the fact that he's asking for it, I mean, really, what do you have to lose?
That's true.
Well, I'm so sorry for your pain, and I'm so sorry for the frustration that you feel. But until you can actually have some kind of communication here where you can really, he understands you and you understand him. And if your counselor is not helping that happen, if our coach is not able to help you guys accomplish that, I'm not putting down your counselor, certainly not putting down our coaches, but I'm saying that somehow, some way, there's going to have to be some kind of a meeting of the minds where you understand each other. And it sounds, based on what you're saying, that that isn't happening.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else to say to
That's
this.
correct.
Okay. Well, then
Okay. Well, thank you.
it's your decision.
I appreciate it.
Okay. All right.
Thanks so much, Amy.
Yes, thanks.
Was there something that I was missing that you got that I missed? Okay.
I don't think so. It sounds like a communication issue, an understanding communication issue, which, once you figure out how to move past it,
If you can.
they can.
If you can. Well, what I'm saying is it takes two. And we hope it works. We hope that our coaches have valued you. We have a lot of confidence in our coaches, a great deal of confidence in our coaches. And I don't know who your counselor or therapist is, but I hope that whoever he or she is doing a good job as well. Just be careful that if you use both a counselor and a coach, that you don't kind of play them against each other. What I mean by that is that, well, you tell your coach, well, here's what my therapist said I should do. What do you think I should do? Or do you say to your therapist, this is what my coach thinks I should do. What do you think? Just be careful that that doesn't become a thing where it becomes one against the other. You don't want that to happen. And so often it's better to deal with one helper at a time so you don't get confused or things conflicting there. And of course, your therapist may be absolutely amazing, and I'm certainly not trying to put him or her down. And we don't try to keep people away from their therapist because that's unethical. But you might consider, okay, I'll deal with one at a time.
Yeah,
All right.
that's good.